This happened in the fall of 2021, when I was living alone for the first time in a rented townhouse in southern Illinois. I was 27 with a full-time job and a steady routine, but the idea of being completely alone still made me nervous. I'd just gone through a rough breakup and thought the silence might help me heal. The townhouse was one of several identical units in a small cul-de-sac just off a rural highway. It was plain but clean, quiet, and tucked away. The neighborhood had that sterile suburban feel: beige vinyl siding, neat hedges, wind chimes, and mailboxes with family names painted on them. Most of the residents were older, with a few young families. I didn't know anyone well, and I liked it that way. But from the start, one neighbor stood out. He lived 3 doors down, a tall, heavy-set man, probably mid-40s with a scruffy beard. He had this odd habit of standing outside his house at night. Sometimes he'd pace or smoke, but often he'd just stand still, staring. I'd pull into my driveway after work around 9 or 10 p.m., and there he'd be, leaning on his porch rail or standing at the edge of his driveway, facing the street. He never waved or smiled. He just stared, even if I looked right at him. I tried to ignore it. Friends and my mom said maybe he had insomnia or was just a night owl, but there was something about the stillness that unsettled me. He didn't fidget, check his phone, or shift his weight. He just stood there like a statue. Then the noises started. It was mid-September when I first heard it. I'd just gotten home after a long shift at the distribution center, eaten something quick, and crashed around midnight. At 2:37 a.m., I woke up to a sound like metal scraping against wood. At first, I thought I was dreaming, but then I heard it again, a slow, creaking noise like an old gate opening. My bedroom was on the first floor of the back of the unit, with a sliding glass door and vertical blinds leading to a small fenced-in backyard lined with decorative rocks instead of grass. Every footstep back there was audible. I sat up, heart racing. Then came soft crunching sounds, slow footsteps on the rocks. This wasn't an animal. I grabbed my phone and the dull kitchen knife I kept in my nightstand for emergencies, which suddenly didn't feel so ridiculous. I crouched near the blinds and peeked through, but couldn't see anyone. The motion light wasn't on, which meant they were either out of range or had come in a different way. I called 911. The dispatcher was calm, took my address, and said officers were on the way. I stayed crouched in the dark, barely breathing. About 10 minutes later, red and blue lights flickered through my front window. I opened the door and met 2 officers. I explained everything. One went around back, while the other stayed with me. The officer came back saying the gate was closed, no signs of tampering. He'd write up a report, but there wasn't much else to do. They didn't see anyone, no footprints, no damage. One even said, "Probably just a raccoon," and gave me a look that said I was wasting their time. They left after about 10 minutes. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning, I went outside to check myself. That's when I saw it. A flat stone about the size of a paperback wedged under the bottom edge of the wooden gate. The gate had a heavy spring that made it swing shut automatically, but the stone kept it from closing. It was subtle, like something someone would do if they wanted to slip back in later, without making noise. I picked it up and threw it across the yard. I called the police again, told them what I'd found. They added it to the report, but said there wasn't much they could do unless a crime was committed. I asked if they could question neighbors or check for cameras. They said no. 2 nights later, it escalated. At exactly 2:14 a.m., I woke up to the sound of my back door handle turning. First, it rattled gently, like someone testing it. Then it jiggled harder. I sat up, heart hammering. I couldn't see through the blinds, but I could feel someone on the other side. My mouth went dry. I grabbed my phone with shaking hands and called the police again. While waiting, I crouched in the hallway, out of view. My motion light clicked on. Through a tiny gap in the blinds, I saw a shadow move across the window. It was a man. He didn't run or hide. He just stood there. The same 2 officers showed up. This time they found footprints in the gravel, big ones leading right up to the door. But again, since no entry had been made, there wasn't enough to go on. They promised to patrol more often and told me to keep my doors locked. The next day, I bought security cameras, mid-range Wi-Fi models, and set one above the back door and another over the front porch. That night, I stayed up in the living room with the lights off, watching the live feed on my phone. 2:14 a.m. passed. Nothing. Then at 2:23, the back camera triggered. A man stepped into frame. He came through the gate like he knew exactly how to avoid the motion sensor until the last second. He was tall and broad, wearing a black hoodie with the hood up, jeans, and gloves. He walked up to the door, looked directly at the camera, and smiled a slow, stretched-out grin. Then he backed up, still staring, and vanished into the dark. I called the police again. They came back, watched the clip, and admitted it was unsettling. But since he hadn't broken in, damaged property, or shown a weapon, they said there was still nothing they could do. They wouldn't even ask the guy down the street to check his doorbell cam. I begged. They said their hands were tied. That night, I packed a bag and slept at a hotel. When I came back the next day, I found 4 muddy handprints on the glass door, too high up, too low, like someone had crouched down and rested their hands there while staring in. I moved out a week later, broke my lease, forfeited my deposit. I didn't care. I couldn't stay another night. The final straw was a note I found in my mailbox the day I left. It was handwritten in small, cramped letters on lined paper. It said, "The cops leave, but I don't." I filed one last report. This time the officer looked genuinely disturbed by the note and promised a wellness check on the neighborhood. But it was too late. I never went back. About a month later, I got a Facebook message from a girl named Kayla. She said she was a new tenant. Her message read, "Hi, sorry to bother you. I think you used to live here. Did you ever have someone in a black hoodie hanging around the backyard? I keep hearing footsteps at night. And last night, someone knocked on the glass door around 2 a.m. and just stood there." I didn't reply. I didn't want to know what happened. I work for a property preservation company. We deal with foreclosed homes, locking them up, cleaning them out, winterizing them, and sometimes boarding them up if there's been vandalism. It's not glamorous, but it pays well. Most of the time, it's quiet work. You spend hours alone in houses that used to belong to people who aren't around anymore. Sometimes it's sad, sometimes boring, but once in a while, a house feels different, off. This happened in 2020 when I was sent to clear out a property in a rural part of upstate New York. It was one of those dying towns. A single gas station, half the stores closed, cracked roads with weeds growing through them. The house was a small one-story place down a dirt road, surrounded on 3 sides by thick brush and trees. No neighbors, just silence. According to the file, the house had been foreclosed after an elderly woman died. No heirs had come forward to claim it. The utilities had been shut off for over a year. My job was to catalog anything left, clear it out, and secure the place for winter. I drove up on a Monday morning around 9 a.m. with a small box truck and my gear. From the outside, the house looked fine. Windows shut, door locked, roof intact. Just a lot of weeds and vines climbing the porch. The front door was swollen in the frame, and I had to push it open. Inside, it looked normal enough. Dusty, stale air, faded furniture. Then my work phone rang. It startled me because I had no service out there. I'd already checked. No bars. But it buzzed anyway. No number showed, just unknown caller. I answered. Nothing. Just a faint static sound. I said hello twice. Hung up, figured it was a glitch, and got back to work. I always start by taking photos of every room and item. The living room was full of old furniture, lace curtains, framed paintings. Reminded me of my grandma's house. Heavy furniture, doilies, porcelain figurines. Down the hall there was a smell, not rot, more like mildew, dust, and something faintly metallic. There were 3 bedrooms. One was empty except for a sagging mattress on the floor. Another was clearly a sewing room, spools of thread everywhere and a dusty machine on the desk. On the wall was a corkboard covered in old newspaper clippings, mostly obituaries. Dozens of them, all clipped and pinned neatly. All local names, none I recognized. I moved on. In the master bedroom, there was a rotary phone on the nightstand. Off-white, yellowed with age, long coil cord. The kind of phone that shouldn't ring, because the line had been cut years ago. I stared at it for a second, then kept moving. In the bathroom, my phone rang again. Unknown caller. This time I hesitated. I stepped into the hall and answered. Nothing. Then, after 5 seconds, a whisper, so soft I could barely hear it. "Don't answer phone in the bedroom." Then the line went dead. I froze, heart racing. The house was completely silent. Windows shut. No one outside. No sign anyone had been there. My first thought was a prank. Maybe someone from work messing with me. But no one knew I was there that early. And again, no signal. I checked my phone, one bar, then nothing, like it flickered in and out. I tried calling my supervisor. The call failed. I decided to finish fast. I started boxing up books, figurines, dusty glassware in the living room. But the whole time, I felt like I was being watched. Kept glancing at the hallway, half expecting to see someone standing there. Then the phone rang a third time. But not my phone. The rotary phone in the bedroom. A shrill mechanical ring echoed through the house. That phone should have been dead. No service, no dial tone. But it rang anyway, loud and old-fashioned. I walked slowly down the hall, phone still in my hand. It rang again and again. I stepped into the bedroom doorway. The phone sat on the nightstand, the receiver trembling with each ring. I didn't dare pick it up. Eventually it stopped. I backed out of the room. I wanted to leave, but part of my job is securing the property. I still had to check the basement. I almost bailed but didn't. Pride? Stubbornness? Maybe I just didn't want to admit how scared I was. The basement door was in the kitchen. I opened it slowly, flashlight in hand. The wooden stairs creaked under me. The smell was mold and something like rust. Shelves lined the walls, filled with paint cans and broken furniture. In the back corner, on a small table, sat a cordless phone, a newer gray plastic model, covered in dust. Next to it was a stack of yellowed notebooks. I picked one up. Each page had a name, a date, and a short sentence. Lena H., July 3rd, 2019. Rang once, didn't answer. Carl M., September 12th, 2019. Picked up, warned him. Dozens like that. I dropped the notebook. My heart felt like it fell out of my chest. I looked around the basement, terrified someone was in there with me, watching from the dark. I bolted up the stairs, looking over my shoulder the whole way, heart in my throat. I didn't finish the job. I drove straight back to the office and filed my report. I didn't tell them everything, just wrote that the property was unsafe and might have squatters. They reassigned it to another crew. 2 days later, I got a text from one of the guys, Mark. He'd gone out there that morning to finish. I hadn't told him what happened. His text said, "The phone in the bedroom with no service rang while I was in there. What the hell?" I called him right away. He told me he didn't pick it up because it freaked him out. The next day, Mark quit without notice. He's not dead or anything. I eventually checked his Facebook. He's posted since then, but we've never talked again. I don't know what else he saw in that house, but it must have been bad enough for him to want out of the job completely. My boss called the police to report possible squatters after Mark quit, but they found no one. Everything about that house, from the location to the eerie interior to the phone calls to my cell and that voice on the line, and that old phone ringing, felt like stepping into a real horror movie. It had to be one of two things, an elaborate sick prank or something much worse.